Daylight is a terrible game. I don't just mean in comparison to other horror titles. I simply mean in general. The game mechanics are questionable at best, and when a horror game fails at horror, the one thing it's supposed to excel in, you know you have a major issue on your hands. The game fails to be frightening or tense. It fails to make you feel vulnerable. It simply fails. Visually, it had just one thing that impressed me, while the rest was just a squandered use of the Unreal Engine 4 license. That one thing? A little wisp of dust that appeared to realistically get kicked up when doors were opened with haste. Besides that, you're looking at generic corridors, uninspired ghosts, and that's about it. There really is nothing here that could not have been done on a lesser engine. The few things that the Unreal Engine 4 excels at, lighting and shadows, were okay at best. The team at Zombie Studios also made use of the soon-to-be overused and often terrible-looking chromatic aberration in Unreal Engine 4. This is an attempt at replicating a real-world optical distortion effect where a lens is unable to bring all color wavelengths together at the same focal plane. So what you end up with is something that looks like distorted colors such as red and green being separated by a very small margin. It typically shows up in film and more often than not in still photography. Sure, the human eye can also experience this same optical distortion, but our brains typically correct it and ignore it for the most part. So why then is it featured so prominently in this game and in other Unreal Engine 4 promotional materials? It's an attempt to be cinematic that ultimately just ends up looking terrible in most scenes, and honestly has no place in this or most other games. On larger monitors or at higher resolutions, the effect is far more pronounced, almost looking like the scene should be viewed with 3D glasses. It honestly bugged me far more than it should have, simply because the technique has a side effect of distorting some of the image quality, just enough that it ends up looking blurry. I would much rather not have that effect and have cleaner image quality than have it enabled and wondering if I need to have my eyes checked. The audio was simplistic, but the random repeated quips from your character grew to be tiresome, even during the incredibly short hour or two that the game will take most people to complete once. If nothing else, I will give it a slight thumbs up for the ambient noises in the game that will, at first, make you take pause that something might be going on around you. However, even though those ambient wails, sounds, and voices are initially a great mood setter, you quickly realize that they are simply a part of the background and nothing more. As with most other things in this game, you quickly learn to tune them out completely. In Daylight, you are a woman named Sarah that regains consciousness in an abandoned hospital. As typical for a game like this, you have absolutely no idea how you got there or what your objective is. Fortunately for you, there's a kind man that calls a cell phone that was conveniently dropped next to you. The man serves to both guide you, to a very small degree, and to provide a very small bit of story. The bulk of the story, say 95% of it, is discovered through a large number of letters and notes you will have to find in each level. They really throw a lot of these notes at you right from the start and force feed the story right down your throat. Ultimately, your goal in each level is to find enough relics to proceed. Conveniently, these relics look just like the notes you pick up. Lucky for you. And given how each level is procedurally generated to a degree, you never know if you're going to pick up a relic or a simple note next. However, once they are all found, a sigil appears somewhere in the level. Find the sigil, pick it up, and experience a little memory flashback concerning the person or persons that are the subject of the level you're playing. Once that's over with, simply find the glowing exit door to the next level. It's incredibly simple. I guess it should be noted that while you're busy searching for notes and relics, you are going to have some run-ins with various ghosts and monsters. Sadly, none of them are all that frightening or threatening. As you pick up more relics in a level, the dangers are supposed to ramp up and the scares are supposed to be more frequent. However, the degree to which it ramps up is more like turning a dial from 1 to 2 instead of cranking it up to 11. The appearances of the ghosts and monsters are negated not only by the glow sticks and flares you can pick up, but also by the fact that you can run indefinitely. So, when you run out of the non-lethal, light-emitting staples of modern, boring horror titles, you can simply run past the monsters to safety. Don't worry though, they tend to throw a healthy supply of glow sticks and flares your way around every turn. It must also be noted that while the game is supposedly procedurally generated, there are still some canned scares that will frequently happen in the same areas time and time again. When these happen, the game snaps your view to the scare that they want you to see. This is simply a sign of bad game design. The game is meant to be played more than once, but quite frankly, you probably won't want to. It brings nothing new to the genre, and it actually hampers the genre in many instances. There's no sense of urgency or terror as one might encounter with a playthrough of games like Slender. Even comparing Daylight to the last major horror release, Outlast, there's simply no question that Outlast is a better title. Yes, Outlast is also a relatively terrible horror title, but at least it had a few moments of potentially frightening encounters. The story was also much better in Outlast, which really isn't saying much for Daylight when you think back to just how forgettable and ham-fisted the story was in Outlast. The footage you are seeing here is from the first level of the game. Sadly, later levels are merely more of the same. While this review does draw to a close, I will at least grant you the rest of the footage, which takes us to the end of the first level, and partially into the next, just to give you some idea of the repetitive chore that punctuates the gameplay of Daylight. With a mediocre story, terrible use of the Unreal Engine 4, and tedious gameplay design, perhaps Daylight should have never seen the light of day. With that terrible pun out of the way, this has been Zips for Total Gaming Network and CS Nation. Thanks for watching.
What the hell? Can it be? I see you.
Does being out of the dark make you feel better? Well, it shouldn't.